Matt loves the Civil War. He's a nasty freak for the Civil War.
That's true. I can't get enough of it.
Don't deny it.
Filthy little hoe.
Well, good for you. It's in some ways it's still going on.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, Boogaloo, baby. It's happening again.
Right. And so what can we learn from the Civil War of yesteryear? First of all, before we even get into that, the Civil War is like a hot commodity with American nerds. Like if you're a history nerd in America, that's your war. Why do you think it's that one over, say, like the Revolutionary War or the Cuba invasion or whatever?
Well, I mean, for one thing, if you're a fan of mass death, you can't beat it. It's the single highest casualty event in American history. And remember, this is with a much smaller American population. So as a percentage of the population, it's even more significant. And so the battles are big. Most Revolutionary War battles are like five farmers hiding behind a bush, shooting at some redcoats, and then running away, and then dying of pellagra. That's it. The vast majority of American casualties in the Civil War, in the American Revolution, besides the people who died in all wars back then, which the majority, which was disease. That's because you got people in a camp, guys in a camp before the advent of penicillin or modern sanitation, and most of them were going to die of diarrhea. Diarrhea killed most soldiers up until the 20th century, and that includes the Civil War and the American Revolution. But of people who would be considered like war casualties, the majority of American casualties were suffered by prisoners of war, specifically the ones who were stuffed in a bunch of prison ships in New York Harbor. In Fort Greene Park, there's a big monument to what they call the prison ship martyrs. Tens of thousands of guys who shit themselves to death in brigs controlled by the British in the East River. And where the Navy Pier is now, or where the Navy Yard is. So there's just not a lot of action and also the French were really the ones who won, and that's not fun to remember. That it really would not have happened without the French and Spanish intervention, and the Dutch also, by the way, intervening on our behalf. Whereas the Civil War, it's all American, no foreigners involved, just a good old brother versus brother smackdown with huge set-piece battles, massive casualties. When you're a kid and that's the kind of thing that you enjoy, it's going to be the one to twitch your trigger more than any of the other ones. It's got it all. And, of course, it's got the pathos of a civil conflict also, which people get to feel like a tragic romance about.
Right. And it's one of the few wars in the U.S. that's still, like, reenacted, you know? Like,
yes.
No one wants to come over from the U.K. and redo the revolution. There are probably very few native tribes that want to reenact the Indian wars that we had or, like, the Mexican-American War.
Every war has reenactors because there are enough freaks for every war to have people who are obsessed about it. But the Civil War is by far the most. I do remember, though, one time going to the cemetery, the big cemetery in Brooklyn. What the fuck's it called?
In Bushwick?
Yeah, Greenwood. Greenwood, in south of Prospect Park. And there was an American Revolutionary like encampment for reenactors, and a guy dressed up as a redcoat with like the full beaver hat and everything, and the brown vest musket, gave a breakdown of how it worked with a hilarious like Bensonhurst accent.
Fantastic.
I've actually been reenacting the Revolutionary War as one of the people that died of diarrhea constantly throughout my 20s and 30s.
Someone's
got to do it.
He's had several of these reenactments overlap with our podcast.
Yeah, sometimes we have to stop the podcast because I have to go do a reenactment.
I'm remembering the past. I'm remembering history.
We'll be doomed to repeat it, if we don't.